BBL Supercoaches, we are back in action. Super excited. Everything is normal compared to what happened with the NBL stuff. So if you want to jump in my league, beat me and all of my mates to 686-270 for the open league in this one. I'm super excited to get things going. Now, let's go in and have a quick look at how things shape up. And the first thing will be the schedule is what we need to be focusing on here. Because the biggest part of this game is the schedule. You know, some parts of NRL and AFL, if you're in any of those games there, become important around the schedule. But when you've got double games in this section of things, that's when it can become very, very important there. So when you are looking at some of those key dates there, this is when it kicks off in round 1. We've got head-to-head league final series is going to begin in round 8. And then round 9 is when things finish up. So that's a very important part. And then the tournament schedule here kicks off with round 1 with the Sixers and the Hurricanes playing twice. So they become a very important couple of squads to look at. Heat and Thunder play twice in round 2. So you're going to want a little bit of a collection of those guys as well. Round 3, we're going to see the Hurricanes have a second double. Now, we haven't seen the Hurricanes really be relevant almost at all, or until right at the back end of BBL for the last few years. And in this season, we get 2 doubles for them in the first 3 rounds. So a team very, very important to be filled with Hurricanes in your squad there. Scorchers play twice in round 4, and then the Stars play twice, having their second go around in round 3, and then in round 5, but sandwiched together with a round 4 bye. Round 6 is the only round there where every team just plays the once. Round 7, Hurricanes play twice again. So in the first 7 rounds, they play twice, 3 times, which is pretty wild. And then the Strikers have their first double, which brings in Matty Short and JB Overton back into the frame. For round 8 there, the Renegades get to have have a couple of goes there. And then the Sixers have another crack of 2 games. They're in round 1. And then in round 9 following their bye. So you can see here it's not too full on, to be fair, with only a few teams having a bye. That potentially leaves a little bit of room for a non-playing cheapie on our benches, which some people use, and especially with the flex position now. And in these shorter seasons, it does leave some potential openings anyway, to have someone sitting there as a non-player. Some strategy can allow you, if a player does come into the season a little bit late through injury or through international commitments, or they just arriving in round 3, for example, you could have them and they could be like a 130k decent player, but they're coming back for round 3 or 4. They could be the guy that sits on your bench as a non-playing guy there. It can help you with your looping and different things like that, but can also come in and be a scorer when they have a double in round 4 or round 5 or whatever that is there. So there's a couple of really interesting and important things when you're looking at BBL for this season. Now, if looking at prizes, really, really cool to see this year. 25,000 up top for the winner. It's a really great game to play if you're looking at that opportunity or the potential to try and win some prizes there. And then some really nice ones all the way through the top 10. And then $500 or $1,000 if you win the round, each and every round there of the 9-round season. So super exciting that's where it's been at. Nothing changes basically from last year. Super excited for how that one is going to play out. Now, if we are looking at players in our first reaction here, you actually see some pretty good numbers across the board. So here you've got the wicket keepers. We'll look at them just straight up because there's less of them. But Rizwan comes in having not played in the BBL before, I don't believe. Definitely not in the last bunch of years. But he's at 152, which is the price that all of the imports will come in at. And then there's not many of the keepers that did really, really well last year. So you got Allsop at 122. Carey and Billings, the only other 2 guys over 110. And then we have a few in this section here with Philippi, Pearson, Seifert, Inglis, all over 100k, and in a really, really good section there. But as we did mention, the 2 teams that play twice in round 1 are the Sixers and also the Hurricanes. So when you look at that, you've got Philippi, you've got Wade, and you've got McDermott, all at really nice prices there. Finn Allen comes in at 85k after having a really tough start, then did really well for a couple of lower ones to finish, but he's someone that has the potential for big games, and at 85k could be a player that is worth a punt. If we're expected to see Inglis for a lot of the Big Bash as well, then him at 102k seems ridiculous. So wicket keepers, I think there's too many to choose from. Basically, you've got guys like Joe Clark who've come out and done well in previous seasons, just played the 2 games and a 68k price point for him, topping an injury, I believe, at the beginning of the last one as to why he only played the couple. So when you're looking down here, you don't have to spend too much in wicket keepers to get some guys that have potential to do really well. We saw Seifert come out and have a cracking start to the season last year before falling away. Got other guys like Billings who can do solid work, but you can see there a few of those guys still averaged okay, but it's not the position that can really make or break your season. That's where looking at something simple with the Hurricanes having 3 doubles in the first 7 rounds, someone like Ben McDermott or Matt Wade that are going to play the majority of the season there, they're really good opportunities to plug one of those guys in. You have 2 cracks at it. We know that wicketkeeping isn't the best position, and you can go from there. Philippi, another simple one, plays a double in round 1 and is fairly safe and reliable on a year-to-year basis. And then you've got the upside of guys like Inglis, Finn Allen, these types of players in that position. Finn Allen generally is going to be bat only, especially with Inglis being around. And in that case, at 85k, could slot him in there as well. Now, just a quick look at a couple of the Hobart players there, and then the Sixers who do play the double in round 1. So Steve Smith won't be available for that, but Mitch Owen, very, very likely to be available. And with his all-rounding prowess, ability to hit bombs and get economy rate bonuses at the start of innings, with the bowling, he becomes very, very important and a potential captain in round 1. You can see there he's by far the most expensive and had an incredible average last year. When you're looking at the bowling side of things, you've got Nathan Ellis as number 2 with a 58 average. So Mitch Owen, clearly a captaincy option for that round 1. So something to think about, and then has the double in round 3 as well. So similar to other years with Matty Short, if they have a couple of doubles early, it's very hard not to start with them or get them in straight away. Whereas in this case, round 1, very much needed someone like him to with the 2 chances at hitting a massive score. And yeah, those type of guys that have the crazy upside, they should be in your team. If you miss out on one of those, your season is done, unfortunately. Yes, you could take the risk and go against it, but some of these other guys you're selecting anyway, do they have the crazy upside that someone like Mitch does? It's probably a no. Now we see Babar Azam come in this year. It's just unfortunately not in a lot of form, but Sammy Curran, Tom's brother, will be very, very good. But the price discrepancy between the two, Tommy's just a tick over 100k, and Sammy comes into that import price, and quality wise that they can be very similar at times. So yeah, looking at that, it's like, well, yes, he plays a double early, but do you want to spend up that 152, not knowing where he's going to bat and if he's going to come over to Australia and do a really good job with the ball? Now moving down, Bo Webster, and you got Chowdhury in there, the 2 all-rounders in the side for the Hobart boys. Bowie moves from the Stars, which is going to be good fun. I expect him to bat pretty high at 3 in this team. It's never usually been a sort of dominant batting lineup when you're relying on a lot of their middle order guys to do the job in Chowdhury, in Tim David. And up top, they've had the mixture between Mac Wrights and those types of guys up there. Who else am I missing? Matty Wade. Weatherall moves over there as well, which is going to be interesting. So does Webster actually bat 4? It's probably the question. Or does Wade slot into that one? And we see like Weatherall, McDermott opening up top, Wade at 4 potentially, and then having Bo Webster in at 3. That's the potential, with Mac Wright probably missing out in that scenario. Sorry. Just completely skipped over Mitchy Owen. So yeah, we might actually see someone like Matty Wade actually a little bit lower this year, or even potential for McDermott. And to be honest, with the setup that they do have up top, with Weatherall opening with Mitch Owen, it probably means one of those guys has to fall down to like a 5 to fit those guys in. So that'll be interesting to see how that one plays out. But if Bo Webster is there for at least the start of the season, that first 3 rounds, and we'll know how the test setup is well before this. It's just going to be based around injury and stuff like that as well, as to if he comes in and out of Big Bash. But he's going to be a really fun one to climb into at 132, I think, with the potential for some bowling as well. Chowdhury, we know he can do his thing, but every day of the week you would select Webster over Chowdhury, just with the, he has that potential to bowl sort of 1 to 3 overs. Webster could be similar, but would bat higher. So very simple there, and is naturally a better player. Tim David's an interesting flyer early. I think at 123, been in really good form, really good touch for Australia. It could be a guy that could come out and do some really good work there. But bat only, that 5 and 6 type player, does he sneak ahead of one of those guys that we just mentioned before in the Wades, McDermott's, those types of players? Or does he stay at like 6 and at 123 can be a very tough guy to have on your side? Don't know enough myself yet for guys like Rehan Ahmed, for Rashad Hussain, as to how many we had Hussain be around it last year and then not end up playing. So we'll have to work out how things shake out a little bit closer, because we still have 45 days until first game. So just excited to see those guys. And then when you're looking at the 6s, you see a really, really nice price point here for Jack Edwards at 113. He had a solid season, not as good as the year before, but with the potential for him to bat in the top 6 there and bowl 3 to 4 overs, I think he becomes very, very important. And then down the line, just those couple of Hurricanes guys. Do you take a flyer on Jake Weatherwood at the top, playing really well in his Sheffield Shield stuff at the moment? Will he be able to come out and have a better season for Hobart? In a bit of a change from Adelaide, he had a great score to start the season last year, and then the final 4 games, he didn't score very well. So that's where the average of 22 and the cheap price comes into it. So at 85k, becomes very, very fun and very interesting there. For the bowling side of things, as we see there, you can put Mitch Owen in either slot. Same with Sammy Curran. We do have a few really good 6s bowlers in Dwarshus and in Sean Abbott that come into the fold here and under 150k. So not overspending for these guys, but you're probably spending about what they're worth. So if you're buying these guys, it's likely for the point straight up, expecting one of them or both of them to take sort of a 3-wicket haul in one of their games and pick up the 70s, 80s, 90s with maybe a 1 for type game. And that's generally what you expect with these two. They're 2 incredible wicket takers in the BBL, and I expect that to continue coming into this season. Ellis at 154, it feels a little bit expensive to start the year. Again, paying for the points, for locking him down and the consistency that he does provide. But do you go for a bit more of a flyer and 20, 23, 24k down the line in someone like Riley Meredith, who actually had a really hot start to the season last year as well? Do you go for those all-round type players in Chowdhury, Ahmed or Hussain, or a Chris Jordan, who we know can bowl the 3 or 4 and come in and whack him at the end at a 105 price point there? Plenty to think about with those Hobart boys, and we will find out more over the next month, but it's just good to sort of muck around and play with your squad and see where things end up. Now, if you're looking down the line, there are not too many guys that really stand out at the cheaper price point, unless we do find some injuries in this team. But I think a lot of our cheaper players, when cheapies to fill the bench, are going to come from a lot of the other teams, basically. A little bit of a strategy thought in this first few weeks there. So we've got the first 2, let's just say. You do want to fill your team with a lot of those guys that play the doubles in each of those weeks, right? So you're not just going to absolutely load up on Hurricanes and 6s. Now, probably more Hurricanes than 6s because they have the extra double in round 3. But you do want to fill the rest of the squad in with guys that are undervalued, per se, or have had a bad season and they come into the season a little bit undervalued, knowing that what they can provide. Filling your squad with some of those single game players will work out as well, because you do still need to make some money. And sometimes just paying exactly for what we expect from them in an Ellis or a Dorsch or an Abbott can be good for some players, but you can't do it for all. You won't make the money that you need to be able to get to the big dogs and the big captains later down the track. You might be looking at having Overton and Matt Short in that Adelaide fixture down in round 7. But if you haven't got the cash generation, you're not going to be able to get to those guys very easily. So we'll work that out as we go. Now, let's go down the line. We'll take out those 2 teams now, and we'll add the others just to make things a little bit easier for us. As we scroll down, just get a bit of a look. But how good's Mark Steckity up top at 88 average at 231k? So impressive. You know what you're getting out of Matt Short and Overton. They're going to be very consistent, and Maxwell has been the same, but he's coming back from injury there. Now, Cooper Connolly was someone that I was just like, wow, it's going to be hard to not have him in your side. He should bowl 3 to 4. He will bat 3 for his side there at 188k with no clear double coming up in the first few weeks. It does make it hard to pick some Perth players that are expensive when you're looking at those singles. As I said, the single game players, especially in the first 4 rounds, you need to be looking at guys that are undervalued and you expect to go up in value. You're looking at guys like Spencer Johnson, Beresdorf, Sutherland, Tom Rogers, all guys that have done really, really well. Let's check who has in round 2. So we've got Brisbane Heat and Thunder. So you can look at the odd Thunder or Heat player. But again, do you want to buy the more expensive players, or do you want to go a little bit cheaper with guys that probably have a little bit of value to make as well? That's, I think, a general strategy that should work out well to begin this season. Now, I clearly made the top 1,000 last year. I think it was in the mid 600s, so that was a good improvement from the year before, and we expect to go again this year now that we're very much getting used to the format and how to do it right, and selecting the correct upside guys and still making that money. So if you want to jump along for the ride, I expect all of us here watching and listening to have a really, really good season. And I would love to see that. We've got some good wins we had first and second in NRL from the people that follow my stuff. So hopefully we can do the same here in Big Bash. Yeah, so scrolling down the line there. Shaheen Afridi's going to be really fun, how he comes into Australia and does a really good job. You've got Ravi Ashwin, who comes in and will play the full season. So he's an interesting pick at 152k that has a double in round 2. Same with Warner. Or do you just wait, see how they go in round 1 against the Hurricanes and then decide from there? To get a few of those guys very expensive in Warner and Green with Ashwin there for the Thunder. Marnus with his 112 last year, how good. Stoinis finally doesn't come into a season undervalued. He did really well last year. You got guys like Joel Parrish, Richardson, all fairly expensive. Renshaw maybe in the test team, which would be good fun. Agar, Ferguson, 2 guys that are at a good price as well. So not clearly undervalued from those low seasons, and we'll start to see those players very shortly. Bartlett comes in a little bit cheaper than he did the year before after the tremendous season. So someone to have a small look at there. The Renegades, not really one to focus on. They have their double in round 8 and aren't clearly a team that will, unless you're looking at value, are great pickups there. So guys like Thornton, we shouldn't look at, just not super undervalued heading into this season. Colin Munro with his 6 matches for a 7.7 average and still comes in at a 117.5. That's pretty tough. How that one played out to average that low over that many games and still cop a 117, he should be very, very cheap. And yeah, it wasn't to be. Now, an interesting type of player would be a Mitch Marsh at 117.5. The Scorchers do have a double in round 4, play singles every other game. So at 117 for Mitch, if he is bowling and he's batting 3 or up there at opening, or probably opening I'd say in the T20s, if they've got Connolly and Aaron Hardy, then he becomes very important. And that's a price point where you can get the value and you can get the massive scores out of him. So exciting there. Looking at Daniel Sams at 116 is a little bit more interesting than what it was at a 170 or 160, that type of price that he can normally come in at. So for Samsy, that's someone you can look at as well. But the Thunder team has improved and he won't have to bat as high as he has in 2 seasons past and before. Sidney had a solid season there. So Tommy Curran, another interesting one, 106k. The Stars have the 2 doubles, round 3 and 5. if he's around and he's playing decent cricket, then that 40 average should be into the 50s and 60s, and he'll do a solid job. So someone to have a look at 106k there. Sammy Constas at 101. If he's not in the test team, he becomes an interesting flyer at that price point with the double in round 2. So keep an eye out on him. Josh Brown, we know, can always have those big games, but I think I'd rather take a flyer on someone like Finn Allen with the slightly earlier double, so you can use him a little bit earlier. Marley Beardman comes in with a 3-game average of 64.7, but a nice discount at 85k. So if he becomes one of the Perth Scorchers' important bowlers, then I think he is a decent sort of bench filler if that's where the way it plays out. Laurie Evans, back to the Perth Scorchers where he has his best effort. So I think for Laurie, he's an interesting one just to hold off to start, I think, and then see what's happening in that first few rounds. And if he happens to, he always has these few games where he does really well, then that could be a good time to jump on. Bancroft at 81k. We know he can have really good games. Will he be keeping? How are they going to play that one with Jilks? These types of decisions. We'll find out. But he's an interesting one at that 81k. Boise, we know, can have some decent games. You've got Hassan Khan that just had the one game for his 30 average, so comes in at 79k. Aaron Hardy is crazy at $74,000 after 8 games for 28.4 average. Expect him to have a much better season. So I think he'll be a big stash on people's benches. You can go with Jake Fraser McGurk at 73k if you think that he can have some type of a bounce back after a really, really tough season, a tough 12 months for him. He could do that job, but again, you'd be locking him in as a batsman only, single games every week, and taking that flyer that he comes off and has a really good one, but he just needs to get to 20. That was the tough point for him over the last few years. What about Swepo? Moving to the Stars as well. So him at 59k is something that's a little bit interesting. You had Nathan McAndrew, a 60k season for him, only 22.8 average, so well down on where he has been, and he could definitely have an improved season. We've seen him up in the hundreds a few times there. A few other guys to look at. We've got the young gun in Ollie Peak to have a little check out to see how that's going to work out. Hugh Wiebgen only had the 9.3 average, but we'll see where those guys can come into this side. Guys like Campbell Kellaway probably won't be an option. Ollie Davies at 58k, so could be a flyer if he makes his side. Does he get in is going to be more the question for him. And you can see there's not a lot of guys in that really cheap range that would come into people's thoughts, but the main reason you might look down here would be like at an Aidan O'Connor, who at $39,500 has the dual, so you can mix and match them around with your emergencies to do God's work there. Help out when you need to get a score. So just remember, guys, once we set up this squad, there's 12 players that you pick in your starting side, which includes a flex there, which can just be any player from any position. What you can do is move them around very simply. Subs, move them around to flex, to the bench, and so on. What you do need to select, guys, is 3 emergencies. It doesn't have to be from the bench. You can have 2 emergencies doesn't have to be from a wicketkeeper. You could have 2 emergencies in your batsman slot. And in that scenario, you would have to take both. If you were to say you had a really good score, but you also wanted the score from your other guy, you would have to take the lowest score first, and then you would get that higher score as well. But that would mean you have 2 non-players in your batsman slot. If you were to do the 2, just remember, if you had 1 out here, it would take your lowest score of those 2 emergencies. Things you can do, take 3 emergency scores. So all 3 of your emergency guys, if you have 3 outs across it, if a wicketkeeper and you have the emergency here, you can take that. 1 for the batsman, 1 for the bowler. You can take 2 batsmen, 2 bowlers, etc. Like I was just explaining there. And really pivotal to do well in BBL Supercoach is to utilize that properly. If you have someone that is you're out on bye or is a non-player in your side and you can move them around, make sure you do set someone on the bench early. If you're not sure if they're not like a confident guy for you, they're not a VC, a captain, chuck them on there. If they're a bat only, that type of thing, chuck up the emergency on them. If things go really well, you can do some maneuvering with your non-playing guy into the starting side and going from there. And that's where the very helpful part about a non-player would be in this scenario with the schedule. It's because in that first 3 rounds, no team has a bye. So if you're looking to get ahead of the pack and get that really good score, then that can be very, very helpful. And in round 1 as well, if there's guys you aren't too certain on, there are a single game player or something like that, you can chuck them on there. If they happen to score a 60 with a really good strike rate, and they get that 100 and you want their score, then that's where you could just bring in a cheapie into your 17 there, and that can help you get to that score, but then free up some cash to do some other stuff. Whether it's leave some cash in the bank for round 2 to bring in some Heat and Thunder guns, or it's to spread it across the rest of your starting side and get some more of the better players that you are hoping for. So fairly simple there to kick things off, just as we're getting into the start of the preseason for BBL. There's so much to go with injuries, with all of the Shield stuff, with all of the One Day Cup stuff, and then all of the overseas guys. So we'll get lots more information on those guys across the next month and a half, and then it gets serious. It's the 14th of December. Super excited for that. Get into the holiday period. That's why this is awesome. You're hanging out with family and you've got the games on there, and you just got a quick check just before the game starts. You're checking what time it is. Oh, beautiful. Lock it in. Check my team, and make sure it's usually sets the batting lineup for you. You've got the which guys are going to be the bowlers. That's the most important part for round 1, is getting that right, and then just checking up with all the news on X. You see a lot of really, really good content creators out there that are great with late mail and everything like that, and I'll help you guys out along the way. There might be some new people that pop up as well, and if you're following here for the short and sharp advice, is what it'll be throughout the season, just to keep you guys informed on podcasts and also here on YouTube. And we'll keep you involved in that. So super simple one. This one, we had league code, which is in the description as well. We've got just a quick look at all the players and the prices. I think there's some fun guys in around that 100k mark that don't break the bank. You see there 2 million for 17 players. You can get a heap of guys under 100, and then you can spend up a bit there. We've got the look at the schedule, which is a big part of it as well. And as we get a little bit further into the preseason, I'll go through a bit of my plan, which I haven't gone through as yet. Now that we have the schedule, I'll lock in a bit of a plan as to how many guys I'd want from each team. And, yes, we don't want to force that, but that can be a bit of a guide as to, which part of the schedule we want to attack as well. Is it the start of the season there with Hurricanes? Are we excited for Hurricanes? Do we think they're going to have a good season? Is it the Sixers we want to target? Or do we target a little bit more round 2 with Heat and Thunder players? Is it more, okay, we're targeting round 4 with the Scorchers? Is it, the 3 and 5 with the Stars? There's lots of different things you can muck around with, knowing that you're going to have a buy for Stars in there as well. So the strategy is great in BBL Supercoach. That's why I love playing it, and all of you guys will do also. So big thanks to all you for jumping in. We'll leave it there for now, and we'll catch you in the next video, which will be, I think, delving into a little bit more of the schedule and a general plan as to what amount of players you'd want from each side.